And we're live. Hello, everybody out there who probably aren't listening to us quite yet, but this is Fandom Spotting, and we have risen, like Jean Grey has done so many times in the past, to come and talk to you guys about another comic book movie, X-Men Days of Future Past. So, welcome to episode 54, and I'll let our other two panelists introduce themselves.
I guess I'll go first. I'm Morgan. I'm ML Davies on Twitter and Morgan Lee on Tumblr. And I'm a fake geek girl because I have only seen X-Men First Class and this movie, but I love them, so that's why I'm here.
Hello, I'm Gavia, aka Hello Taylor on Tumblr and Twitter. I really love the X-Men. Like, I've read some of the comics, but that's effectively meaningless because there's so many that I'm just like, I don't know
Hold
what
on a
canon it is. And I've seen all the movies, so... Oh, what was that? Sorry?
Sorry, could you hear YouTube started playing? Could you hear that?
No.
Okay, cool. Sorry about that.
Good start. Anyway, I love X-Men. I don't know that much about the comics, except from what I've heard from Rachel and Miles explaining X-Men and a short period of reading a bunch of comics when I was a teenager. So, yeah.
And I'm Laurel. I'm Laurel on Twitter and the Tumblrs. I love X-Men. X-Men was my team growing up. That's what I read. Generation X is actually my team, but I grew up watching the Saturday morning cartoons, which is how I got into them, and then starting to read the comics, and now all the movies, which I probably have like some kind of nostalgia filter over the original Bryan Singer X-Men, but I really like them. And Future Past was basically exceeded most of my expectations when I got to see it, so I'm really excited to talk about it.
Yeah, it was basically everything I wanted. I was just laughing all the way through. Like, there were occasional moments where I'd stop and I'd be like, I'm really emotionally engaged right now, and then like the other 95% of the time I was just like, this is hilarious.
I was really into it. I really loved the look.
Much of the time,
I thought the fighting was really cool. Like especially the
definitely.
Future Past fighting was way better than I thought it was going to be. Mostly because I was a little resistant to change to the Sentinels. The Sentinels are like real goofy and pink, so I was expecting that, but they looked awesome.
They did. They were really scary, and also I liked that they managed to finally work out how to have like a team of people with different superpowers doing like a proper comic book battle where they were all working together and like everything fit in really well, because it's like there was I think in the past, like, I can't really remember the other X-Men movies that well, but there were a lot of times when you just have everyone would be using their powers, but it wasn't like they were people who'd like trained together in the danger room to be really good. Because in the Avengers,
I don't think we really felt like that in the previous fight choreography.
And like Natasha working well together after knowing each other for like a week, and then it's like the X-Men should work together really well.
I was gonna say, I feel like I came into this sort of expecting better fight choreography because Winter Soldier fight choreography was so cool and like really refreshing. It wasn't just like punching a bunch of dudes because I'm good at punching. It was like, here's actual like cool choreographed fighting, and the X-Men, like the Future Past team, was fucking awesome. Boo Boo Stewart and Fan Bing Bang, Warpath and Blink, like them fighting together was awesome. But then when they pulled Colossus in for that was great. Because like Colossus' big fight move is where he throws Wolverine at stuff. So it was nice that they gave him other cool shit to do.
Well, and it's also, I think, what's sort of neat about the two franchises in conjunction with each other from that perspective. I've been joking a lot with people about this, but it's kind of true, is that the Marvel sort of superhero style is that they are all sort of like their powers tend to derive from being very big guys who are very strong, which isn't also to say that they aren't clever, but like, you know, Thor and Captain America and whatnot, like, they're very big people. And the X-Men characters, barring Wolverine, who now looks like he's been on steroids for like 75 years.
I mean, he's probably been on steroids.
I know. Trust me, I'm aware.
Like 10 years, like, just bulking up. And it's like, when you see the pictures of him in the first movie, I'm like, this actually looks better, because Wolverine is not meant to be, like, some perfect-looking demigod. He's a trucker. You can just have him look like a trucker, which is basically, he looks like a young, slightly more attractive, clean trucker in the first movie. And then, like, you get to this film, and it's like, you are a figurine, and your veins are really creeping me out. Just stop working out.
Well, he's been fighting through the apocalypse, okay?
Yeah,
He's real holed up in the death camp.
Hugh Jackman looks like he's been fighting through the apocalypse, and he looks like he's been fighting with his abs.
Anyway, but based on, you know, the characters and the sort of universe built up around them, they're obviously, you know, movie stars, so they're all fit, but it makes sense that they wouldn't need to be that level of just, like, muscles bursting out of them for the most part.
Yeah, Fan Bing didn't need to be, like, hella jacked. So.
Right, and so they all, I mean, again, they are movie stars, but they all look slightly more normal-sized, and therefore the fight choreography is clever in a different way, and I thought that was really refreshing and sort of interesting, particularly because the movies are coming out so close together. The fact that they're so different on many levels, but in that way in particular, I thought was good, because
yeah,
like
I really liked
watching a similar thing.
Like Natasha versus Bucky, that fight scene was really cool because it really highlighted a completely different style of fighting, and we got that here, where like Pieter is like he's the strong man, but they didn't all need to be strong dudes. I wish we had gotten any explanation of what Warpath's powers were besides looking at shit.
Yeah, that was a bit. I think it was like not that many. There wasn't really like.
Well, they all did get a little exposition. Like introduction, because Ellen Page in sci-fi franchises exists only to give you exposition.
Yeah,
so,
like really bad.
I hope at some point,
like, stop telling me what's going on. You poor thing.
Yeah, I like really want Kitty to do something cool, and that was actually a really big disappointment that Kitty didn't get to go back, because she does in the original comic story. Like the original comics have her. Like, so, in the way they structured the movie, the future past is technically around, like our present time. And then they go back to, like, first class time. And in the comics, it's structured, yeah, like, the present time is what they go back to. And the mutant apocalypse is actually 2013, which I think is kind of hilarious. So that Kitty goes back to, like, Kitty from when she first joined the X-Men, not, like, the 70s.
And I guess by this point, like, Professor X and Magneto are both, like, really old.
They're definitely
And there's, like,
40.
one thing that I picked up on, like, no, I mean, like, in the older version. They're both, like, 90. Yeah. And it's, like, obviously he was, like, 12 during the Second World War. But it's, like, there's one thing I picked up on with Magneto that was really cool, where you can definitely see that, like, his powers are being affected by age, because, like, when you see him in the old days, like, obviously he can lift up like a freaking stadium, but then in the future, it's like his powers have, like, degenerated with age so much, like he's having trouble, like, lifting up like a bunch of shrapnel and stuff.
That's really interesting, because a lot of times in comics, as time passes, like especially with especially with X-Men,
because I think like Professor X's powers are meant to kind of get better.
Well, like, as a whole, in the comics, the X-Men, as they age, their powers get, like, different and, like, stronger. Like, you saw with Iceman in the film, like, he can now turn his entire body to ice. Like, that's, like, his... There's a lot of, like,
he's, like,
secondary mutations.
Ability and training, whereas, like, Magneto, obviously, like, I think it's like, you know, how your brain and your body degenerates with age, and I think they must have done that on purpose, because otherwise they'd have him doing something more impressive. Like, you can see he's, like, so powerful when he's, like, 40 and he's at his peak.
Yeah, can we talk about
like,
how they are not... I don't really buy them as being 40-ish. I know, like, Michael
me neither. Like, I don't, even slightly. It's, like, not plausible.
Yeah, I was like, are you
Who cares?
I don't care either.
Well, I guess if, like, you're like structuring the whole thing in real time, it's gonna be pretty weird in the next the next movie if they do it in the first class universe, because they're gonna be 50, and we've already seen them in the 80s in the original trilogy, played by CGI'd younger Ian McKellen.
I think they've basically just dropped that. They're like, we don't care about continuity, just like erase it, replace it with something new and cool. Which, to be honest, I'm like, it's X-Men, just do it.
I mean, I'm fine with it. I'm just saying it's sort of like
Also,
when
I mean,
you create this kind of
it's
tight
basically
timeline.
it's not plausible to have like James McAvoy playing a 50-year-old. So like they're gonna have to. I mean, why not just set the next movie like 1 year after this
do we
one?
know that they're doing it in the 80s?
I don't think
That's
so.
what I've heard. I mean, I don't think they're going to do it like in the next year, but I don't know. We'll see. I think it's kind of dumb to be.
I think it's scheduled for 2017 or I think 2017. So like
I think
3
it's
years.
kind of dumb to do like a
from now
first
when the
class
film
movie
is.
anyway. So that's just me though.
I mean, they've spent all this
Because
money
now
to contract James McAvoy to like recite all this preposterous dialogue and like give it his all.
But they managed to like really.
Like, if you paid him to do that, keep going.
They managed to really cleverly reset the universe, which is what I actually really loved, because most time travel stories turn into like mushy nonsense, and this one they actually really like. I thought the screenplay was tight enough that I was like, this is probably the best way I've ever seen a universe get rebooted this way, where they were just like X3 sucked, and we're just like, no, fuck that. Everyone hated this movie, so it's out of continuity. Everyone's like, Scott Summers is no longer the sad dude who dies. Thank God, that was weird. And I was like, well, like now I'm really interested in these cast members again. Like, I want to see them.
But I think the entire point of them doing that reboot was in order to then be like, goodbye everyone. Now we can have a movie with Jennifer Lawrence, Michael Fassbender, and James McAvoy.
Like, see, that doesn't make any sense to me. When I saw that, I was like, yes, these people are alive again. Tell me more about them. Because...
Right, but I think I think the intention was to be like, and now they're alive over there.
It's like happily ever after, because like
right.
I'm with Morgan on this. Like I also think it's like less plausible that they're gonna bring back the cast of like the movies in the early 2000s, particularly having like a 50-year-old Jean Grey, which I just think like I would like to see it. But like Hollywood is not going to give me that.
Also,
because,
all those actors
like,
don't want to do that anymore.
yeah, like
well,
Halle Berry is like practically you're having to like pull teeth to make her like show up.
Yes.
I don't think she was, but they had to recontract everybody. I don't think that's true. They had to recontract everybody for this movie, and they all signed up for it. I think if Halle Berry really hated the franchise, she just wouldn't have done it.
But I think probably they went to them and said, you'll be in this movie for 10 minutes. We'll pay you a ton of money. And at the end, you'll be shunted off to the side
didn't Bryan
into the sunset.
Didn't Bryan Singer say that the next movie, like the Apocalypse movie, is actually going to have younger versions of Scott, Jean, and Storm? So that actually means they will be recasting it.
Yeah.
Because I just remembered that. So because a lot of people were like, oh, like Lupita for Storm, and I'm like, I think she has better things to do.
Yeah, Star Wars.
Yeah, like that's her money project, I think, and then she'll go off in like.
But don't hate, because Young Storm is really cool. Like they could do a really good movie with a younger Storm, I think.
I wish that would happen, but it's like considering
it's X-Men,
how badly they've dealt with like Mystique, like
yeah,
they're not even able to handle like one female side character, never mind like a female-led like new franchise with like Storm and Jean Grey.
Let's segue into that.
As much as I would love that, I'm quite pessimistic.
On our planning sheet, too many white dudes, and my particular issue is I honestly could not tell if this movie was more or less sexist than First Class, which was just so hella sexist.
Oh my god, I like, yeah, my thesis for X-Men First Class is like, when I first watched it, I was like, yeah, this is not like great in terms of representation. But when I was writing about the costumes, I was like, holy shit. Because only then did I realize that every single female character in the movie is either naked or in lingerie for no reason at all.
Exactly.
Because, like, Emma Frost, she's in lingerie, makes sense. You don't need to have anyone else in underwear. But like, they're also like, oh, yeah, okay, we're going to have Martha McTaggart. We're going to make her an FBI agent. And then we're going to have her do a scene where she goes undercover in underwear for, like, really no reason. But also, like, she has it already under her, like, suit. So it's kind of implying that she always wears, like, garters and stockings and, like, a matching push-up bra under her, like,
and not
FBI
only that,
suit.
so, like...
Strips it off in front of her FBI colleague, who's, like, a 40-year-old man. and then goes in and goes undercover, and I'm like, this is the worst sexy undercover scene ever.
And then
And
they
so,
wipe her memory at the end.
and then Angel, they pull in
Yes.
Angel, who's like completely different timeline in the comics, which is whatever, because all of the first class is like a jumble of people. And I was excited because I really loved Angel in Grant Morrison's All New X-Men. Her character has since been like really weirdly adjusted, but she was like a chubby 14-year-old girl that just gave Wolverine a lot of shit and had to be in like the remedial Xavier School class because she was just like, fuck everybody, and she spit acid and was really cool. Oh, you know what a great interpretation of this character would be? A stripper. She should definitely be a stripper.
There's no reason for her to be a stripper. I was so mad when you told me about that. I was just
She
like,
could have literally been
pathetic.
anything. Anything. But, you know, we're adding another woman, so she should probably be in lingerie, right?
So yeah, like basically first class is like so sexist. And then this one, you're like, they've kind of, like, it's sort of the issue with, like, the, like, representation kind of balance in the cast. They've put, like, all these non-white characters and women in, like, the future scenes. And then their whole role is to fight and protect Wolverine to make sure Wolverine's story goes ahead. And then it's like, well, you're there, you've died several times, you don't get any dialogue, and you're just there in a supporting role to punch people, and it's like, they come across as like really cool and badass, and they get like incredible fight scenes, but they're not really characters. So it's kind of like, we know that you put them here for tokenism reasons, like it's really obvious.
Someone on Tumblr was like, well, okay, there's a diverse cast, but do they get names and motivations? And I was like, they do get names, and they do have motivation, which is stop. Right, and it's like to stop mutant apocalypse. And, well, yeah, so Ellen Page is there to be like, this is how we do things. Warpath looks at stuff. These two dudes fight some shit. Then I send Bishop to the past, and it's like, oh, thank you for like introducing them. Also, I was pissed because they had a fire guy, but it wasn't Pyro. Like, if they're bringing everybody back, they should have brought Pyro back. Sorry, I have a special spot in my heart for that jerk.
I think it was because they wanted to get like cynically. I think they wanted to get as many people who weren't like technically white men in this scene. So wait, like, look, he's Mexican.
Oh yeah. Yes, true.
But like, yeah, I think it was just like they were really attempting to like discourage like the commentary where people point out that it's meant to be like a movie about oppression, and obviously all of the main characters are like, you now have two sets of like two of the main characters who are white men, and then they're like, look, no, we've introduced all these new characters, and they'll definitely get a bigger role in like one of the other future movies. And it's
well,
just like,
thank God that minorities finally exist in the future past. I know it's a shitty apocalypse, but at least they survive for a
and
while.
also,
and Bishop is like so cool.
But also, like after that happens, right? Like at the end of the film, when you see like the utopian future, it's the same time.
Yeah.
But the people who get the utopian happy ending are like the original cast. So
all
it's
white
like
people.
Jean Grey, Scott Summers, Storm. But all of the people from like the dystopian future have just like vanished.
Yeah,
no
like where's Blink
and I mean,
and
I'm guessing
Warpath?
Like I'm guessing that like I mean is Bishop meant to be French, or is just the actor is French? Because I was like, maybe he's
just the actor is French. So Bishop,
I don't know, like
Bishop is like a time traveling character. Like he's on the time stream, and he's from like apocalypse future where you get branded with mutant M.
Find, like, is there any way to like rationalize the reason why like everyone in the happy future?
I doubt that they were thinking about that.
No, I think
they were. It just makes it
okay,
because it's like you have died, save Wolverine and Jean Grey, and now it's like, where are you?
No, I do think they thought this through though, because in the comic Days of Future Past, it's everything happens in America is very American, and the rest of the world is just sort of like, oh shit. And it just quarantines off America. Like, the United States is just a giant quarantine because they're like, oh, man, fuck you and your robots. Like, everybody just sort of develops, like, keep Sentinels the hell away from our country technology. So it's just America as, like, a dystopic wasteland, like, being run by robots. And, like, so in this one, we see them in all these international areas. Like, it's all over the world. And bringing in, like, super diverse, like, future past, I bet you like part of that is so like, oh, they're probably over in their country because they're not like fighting for their lives, kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, I just thought it
Although
was like
Warpath should
it was like
probably
it
be.
should
But I was
in
like, so when
Canada
we're talking about
somewhere.
how we have all these white dudes in roles that are pretty generic and could be anybody, um, like, so Days of Future Past is a story that's been retold in a lot of different ways in different X-Men media, and in the 90s cartoon, which is obviously like the seminal storytelling arc of adaptations of Claremont stories, they do it with Bishop. Like, Bishop is like the time traveler that goes back and is like, yo, stop this because you're gonna cause like this fucking terrible future. And I was sort of hoping when they announced that Bishop had been cast, like, oh, that'd be a really cool framing, like bring in this new character and have him interact with all these characters that we know. And instead it's like, oh, Wolverine, all of your actions are incredibly predictable. Like, I was really disappointed that if they're not going to send Kitty back in time, which wouldn't make any sense with the timeline they set up, because I guess she would go back to like not being born.
Yeah, I mean,
You
I feel like
know?
the way they executed it, like I did find it really entertaining, and I thought that like the way they introduced Wolverine in the 70s was really funny, and like they did do it in a way that wasn't like totally focusing on Wolverine's man pain. But that also just told me like there was
Yeah.
still like no reason for it to be him. Like it just means like, oh, it's easy to make a character entertaining if you've already seen him in like 5 movies and we don't need to tell you anything else. It was just lazy, really.
Yeah. I did like that Hugh Jackman was like, I better be fucking naked when I wake up in the past.
Oh yeah, I think it's
to wear
like
boxers. He was like, nah. Everybody
no,
always wakes up when they time travel naked, so I better be
yeah,
naked. I was like, all right,
Terminator, right?
yeah.
Well, they've also just at this point invested so much money in
In
Hugh
Hugh Jackman's
Jackman
body.
that I think they're kind of well.
They're
Also,
just like, we've spent like the past 10 years forcing you to work out, so we better see it. Like,
well, and they've contracted him for like a bazillion movies, and they've made all these aside movies. Like, I don't think that it was a good idea to have him in that part, but like from a cynical Hollywood perspective, I understand why they did it. I mean, it's not exactly
But I
shocking.
don't think no
yeah.
one would
And
see
also,
this
like, Hugh
movie
Jackman.
if Wolverine was not a main character. Like, I think the X-Men franchise name, because he wasn't in First Class, and that movie was great. Like,
Oh no, I
really
totally
well.
agree. I'm just saying that like I
They've
saw
got him.
the like
So.
dumb studio logic behind it. Like it
The thing is,
makes
like, Morgan and I
perverse
both
sense.
have like a kind of a morbid fascination with like studio contracted actors and how like like Sebastian Stan is like locked into 9 movies with Marvel whether he wants to or not, so he's going to be playing the Winter Soldier when he's like 110. But
Well,
I
I
think
mean,
with
he
Hugh
did
Jackman, the impression
supposedly
I
sign
get
that
is it's like
contract.
he is. Yeah, but it's like with Hugh Jackman, I think it's slightly less like reluctant than someone like Chris Evans, because it's like he does occasionally say like, "Oh, I'm not sure if I'm going to come back for Wolverine," but he never really gives the impression of not really fucking loving Wolverine. Like he's really into it, and he does a lot of stuff like unnecessary press appearances that you wouldn't really do unless you were really into the character and really into X-Men. So it's like at
Oh,
least
he
he's got
definitely likes
some
it.
kind
Yeah.
of
Oh, he
contract
loves
hellscape,
being.
which I think
Yeah.
Jennifer Lawrence kind of is. Like I don't think she has a huge passion for playing the
Oh,
rather shitty version of Mystique that the movies have created for her.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, Hugh Jackman like did his whole like Oscar intro and ended it with "I'm Wolverine," which is hilarious. But I think he just fucking loves being Wolverine. Like, that's probably the
Yeah.
coolest character he's ever gonna play. So, but it's just like really frustrating to me that they have such a cool canon, and if they're going to be interpreting these stories, that they're interpreting them in ways that were not like that are less progressive than the way it was interpreted in like a 1990s cartoon show.
Oh, or even
Like-
basically even really ancient X-Men. Like from what little I know, it's like it's still almost behind that.
No, it is kind of behind that because like Kitty was the main character.
You're still kind of having one female character, and it's Mystique, and like she has like a slightly better role in this movie. I mean, I guess we're going back to the topic of saying, oh yeah, is this more or less sexist in First Class? But it was like with Mystique's role, they kind of almost get to the point where they acknowledge that Magneto and Professor X are really paternalistic and trying to control her all the time. And they do kind of make that like text rather than subtext. but then they don't go all the way. So it's not really criticizing the way like Charles acts, and it never really acknowledges the weird kind of relationship between their ages. Because in first
Yeah.
class, he treats her like she's a teenager, but she's only 2 years younger than him, and he's in his late 20s. So he does
Yeah.
stuff like, I think there's one point where he tells her like not to drink or something, so she doesn't like accidentally slip up on her morphine capabilities or whatever. And it's like, you are really controlling and weird. And in this one, he's like mildly apologetic, and that's effectively it. And in some ways, I find that worse than Magneto being like, oh, I'm going to turn a gun on you, because of course you fucking will. You're Magneto, like you always do the biggest douche move you can think of.
Oh, Magneto, did you have a good idea? Ooh,
No.
now you're turning it into something really terrible.
So close. That's
Meeting up with Mystique, good. Trying to kill her.
Like the greatest strength of the X-Men. The greatest strength of the X-Men movies is just like, it will always trick you into thinking that Magneto is going to do something good. And then you're like, no, he's always going to do the opposite. It's always going to be a disaster, because the only decisions he ever makes are to do something terrible. And I love it. I fucking love it. It's my favorite thing about X-Men.
The Sentinel plot, I was like, oh, what a clever plan, because all you need to do is make them malfunction and the whole thing will go away. Oh no, you just ripped RFK Stadium out of the ground, you sociopathic asshole.
Also,
Why
when
are
I
you
was
this
watching
way?
that scene, like when I was watching it, I was convinced that what was going to happen is he was going to turn the Sentinels on the crowd and then say they've malfunctioned, and then he would save the humans and be like, oh look, here's an example of me being like an amazing hero. So he'd impress everyone, and then it was like he'd have some kind of thing with Mystique, how they've been planning behind Charles's back, and I was like, no, they're not going to do something that smart from a storytelling perspective, and Magneto is not going to do something that smart because he's a tool. Why? Why are you doing this terrible, idiotic idea?
Like, oh, this was so close to being smart, but because you're a weird loner sociopath, it just got really fucked up. So fucked up. Why did you do this, Magneto? Which is, I guess, really the question about all of Magneto's actions all the time.
But it's ultimately more satisfying that way, I feel, because
it definitely is.
I mean, there's like a moment of just like excruciating agony when you realize what stupid thing he's going to do, and then you just sort of tip over into like, yes, this is so fucking dumb. Like, excellent.
Oh no, it was awesome. It was like, yes.
Yeah. I mean, he's definitely my favorite character, like in the X-Men movies, and also he's like my favorite type of character just in general, which is like someone who has a sense of inevitability, like you know that it's always going to go a certain way, and like even if it's like the worst idea you could possibly do, and there's no kind of like every piece of Fallout is going to be terrible. He has to like be true to himself and just go off by himself, do something terrible, fail everyone, and you're like, no, Magneto, there is no other option. It's perfect.
Right, because at the end, because in the future past scenes, he's like, all those years spent fighting each other. So the movie sort of sets up this idea that Magneto could be redeemed so much earlier. Because like
he never will until he's like old and too basically too old to continue being like
that really
kind of
weird
angry young man.
Or the really weird plot where Xavier like brainwashes him into being like an elementary school teacher. That was pretty weird. That's like they hug. It's a weird comic.
I think I've seen that. I've definitely seen that.
It's definitely been on Tumblr.
What have you done?
It's okay. Xavier feels a lot of guilt about it. I do like that they just made Xavier because he's like such this like beatific great dude in all the original X-Men ones, and you're just like, God, he's such a shit. It's just like, God, he's just such a fucking asshole.
I saw some like absolutely hilarious interview with James McAvoy where I was like, wow, so many things about the writing of this movie have become clear, and it was him like explaining the way they characterized Charles Xavier in the early movies. And I assumed like a lot of thought had gone into this process. And he was just like, what we did was like they took like Charles Xavier and they were like, what would be like all the opposite? So they gave him long hair and they made him really impatient. And I was like,
yeah, it was like Jon Stewart, and he was like, well, he was really nice in the old movies, so we decided that he would be really mean in these.
And I was like, yeah. I was type being like, oh, this is really good characterization, because like of course someone with like a really rich guy who went to Oxford with like all these psychic powers would act like this as a young man. It makes a lot of sense. And it was like, no, it only makes sense because you rationalized it. God damn it, it's all stupid.
I love it though.
Me too. I absolutely love it.
Hopefully at some point we'll have a movie where, like, is this the turning point for him being a total shit, maybe? Where he becomes, like, Patrick Stewart's amazing Professor Xavier.
I got the impression that like the end of this movie was meant to be that because it's like he's finally like accepted.
Yeah, I was feeling it.
Like everything, and he's gonna start acting more mature and like start the school and stuff. But you know,
I'll believe it when I see it. Basically.
Yeah, like hopefully his characterization isn't totally reset.
Like,
but I do love that he just lived
him
in
being a teacher has just been like. Sorry.
I was gonna say I do love that he just spent several years just in a house shooting up teen heroin or whatever.
Years. Yeah,
I'm gonna ignore that that was actually 10 years.
Oh yeah, it's totally implausible. It's hilarious. We need to be in 1973 now, so we'll just have had everyone around for that long.
You've been Miss Havishamming it up. Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
Like Magneto's just been in this super prison and is now even more bonkers, but doesn't let you know it till the very end.
God, no, it's like. How crazy would you be after being in solitary confinement? And also, why bother? Why not just execute him? Why spend millions and millions of dollars on this, like, fucking plastic prison underneath the Pentagon? Like, he doesn't have, like, important knowledge about anything. He's just in
Probably
jail.
to use him as some kind of secret weapon.
I know, but it's just, like, it's so dumb. I mean, obviously, like, I understand why they did it, and I don't have a big problem with it, but I'm just like, that's dumb. It is dumb.
Yeah. So, I guess we can talk about Pietro. We should probably talk about him a little bit. Since I was expecting to fucking hate him, I was really pissed that we were getting another white dude. Evan Peters, like just looked goddamn ridiculous in all of the promo shots. But I think it actually worked really well.
It was so good, and also like with all the promo, like the only explanation I could think of when I saw the promo was like the only explanation is it was a teen who like made his own costume, and then he was, and I was just like, excellent, this is perfect.
Yeah, I was like, this only makes sense if he's just kind of like some smug high schooler who's like, yeah, I'm a badass, and that's exactly
It was
100% what it was. It's like, oh, good job, costume designers, a thing I never thought I would say about Quicksilver. But I am, like, annoyed that he is the only Maximov that we saw. I know they cut a line about, like, identifying Wanda, although in the end he was holding his sister. Obviously not his twin,
like a younger, yeah. But it's like, I think that was bullshit. It's like, you've cut another female character. Like, Rogue was originally in the film. They filmed like a 10-minute action scene with Rogue, and then removed it because they were like, it's not really relevant to the plot. And I'm like, Havoc is not relevant to this plot, and you kept fucking Havoc in. No one cares about the guy from the Taylor Swift music video. I care a lot about Rogue.
I think
that's basically the protagonist of the first X-Men movie.
That scene was a good, like, part of the plot where Mystique, is like...
It was good for Mystique, but it was like... I wouldn't say the movie would be better if they edited it out, but I also think the movie would be better if they kept in some Rogue instead of, like...
If it was, like, Angel...
Hiring her.
Instead of Havoc.
Yeah.
I wish it had been, like, Angel instead of Havoc, you know? That would have... Because all I really wanted was, like, Angel and Mystique to have, like, broken away from whatever, like, Magneto's Brotherhood of Evil Mutants is doing and go on... like, be badass lady buddies. I don't know. I just really wanted them to have friends that were also women.
Yeah, because also I think Mystique and Angel would be, like, a really good team.
Right, that'd be interesting.
Like, they're both really impulsive, and, like, they make loads of really terrible decisions, and that makes for good movies. Like, just two people with loads of powers who are really, like, angry and, like, impractical, and would just go around, like, killing people and, like, destroying things. Which is basically just what Magneto does, but they'd be, like, slightly less effective, but it would be great.
But it'd be great, and it'd be, like, ladies with powers.
Like her by herself. It's quite miserable.
Right, that was rough. So I was really happy with Quicksilver, but, like, so unhappy that it had to be Quicksilver, although, apparently it was written for Juggernaut, which I guess is why... Even though we've never seen Wolverine interact with Quicksilver before, he was like, oh, I know this dude who could do it, but he'd be a lot younger now, was like supposed to be like Juggernaut.
Well, I'm sure they just switched it because of the legal stuff.
Really?
To compete with... I have no idea, but if that was originally...
Juggernaut was already in one of the X-Men movies.
Yeah,
like, Juggernaut...
Right, if they're worried about Marvel stealing Quicksilver.
But Marvel
But like,
already
I think
has him.
Quicksilver's
That's
Right, but my
yeah,
point is that it makes sense for them to want to sneak him in,
yeah.
right? So that they
I
have the
mean,
character also.
I would definitely be into like
but
a
it's like
Maximoff
the thing about I
family
think
movie
like
that was
with
like,
Quicksilver, it's not even like he's hot
mhm.
property. Like I think it's
Right.
almost coincidence that like both Avengers and X-Men decided to put him in their movies because like neither of them was really aware that the other one was doing it, and by the time they did it, it was too late to change. And from the press statements I've heard from both of them in this like ridiculous competition, neither of them really wanted a competition, and neither of them really care that much about Quicksilver. He's a relatively minor character, and he's not like a minor
Well,
character with like a following really. I mean, he kind of is, but it's not like his presence would make the movie like enormously different.
yeah, he's
Like
definitely
both
more
films,
of
you
a
could
major
sub in someone
character
else.
for Avengers, but like Wanda's the important character, not really Pietro at all. Like,
Yeah, I'm actually
like the
kind of
only
interested
thing
to
I
see what
could
happens
see,
with Avengers because like Aaron Taylor Johnson, who's playing Avengers Quicksilver, like he got such bad notices for Godzilla. I'm thinking they might try to like publicize Wanda more than Pietro for Avengers instead of being like, oh look at Quicksilver. I think they might literally be like, okay, we're advertising the one who's not famous for being the most boring man in Godzilla.
right? Like, and it makes more sense anyway. Wanda's definitely a much more dynamic character, has a more interesting power, has had way better stories. Pietro's always been like, am I evil or am I not evil? I guess I'll just hang around with Wanda. And like now I have daddy issues, which is like, I mean, he's interesting and he's like kind of has that Namor-ish like I'm a dick, but you need me to do stuff sometimes kind of personality. So I really liked his characterization in X-Men Days of Future Past. But whatever the hell
I
is
loved
going
him.
on with the
He was so
backstory,
entertaining.
yeah, in like Avengers with them being like Hydra
Yeah,
experiments,
like
I like that
their
kind of.
their their parentage is going to be a strange mystery. Like I saw some great Tumblr posts where it was like they were
Mhm.
describing how they describe Wanda and Pietro in Avengers, and it would just be like whenever they're about to say the word mutant, it would just be like a really loud like car horn with like honk in the background, and be like oh Venom, and then it would just stop and get cut off. And I'm like that would actually be amazing. It's like you can't actually use the word mutant, so you're just like yeah, we were born with this like thing, and my dad's some dude, and then it just gets cut off by like an explosion or something.
Right. Well, and that's the thing is like I think being Magneto's son is a really essential part of Pietro's characterization, but Wanda can stand alone as a character much more easily from a comics
Yeah.
fan perspective. So it's sort of just like, I don't really know what you're doing, Avengers. Why did you even introduce him? But I think hopefully we'll see more of them because I do really like Maximoff family angst. Because it's like my father's a supervillain, and I'm kind of a dick, but do I want to be a supervillain? I don't know. I'm sort of wondering if they'll ever go as far as like to Genosha with Magneto.
That would be so
I don't
cool.
know if you can.
I really
Yeah,
just want the X-Men movies to like continue in their current like upward scale of getting more and more bonkers because like this one was so bonkers, and I'm just like,
but it was
please just keep
definitely
going in
less
that vein.
bad bonkers than I thought. I
No,
thought it
no,
was
I mean
either
that
going to be like,
in a really good way. Like I
oh,
think
me
they
too.
executed it in
Yeah,
like such a good way. But I'm so in favor of like X-Men not even like attempting to be like making sense because it doesn't need to make sense. It doesn't really
But
need to be plausible.
I actually
It works
thought that
well.
I actually thought it did make sense though.
yeah, it
No,
made a
no,
I
lot of
thought it
sense.
totally was fun. I mean,
no,
disregard
I mean I don't.
the
I don't mean that it was like incoherent. Like I think like the plot made sense. Like it was easy to understand. Like my 60-year-old parents found it completely fine to understand. Like apart from the stupid apocalypse scene at the end, which nobody understood. But like
He was
it
definitely
is
not
like
blue
really
enough.
yeah. I mean I think also too obscure. So it's like you've got to the point where you're having these post credit sequences where it's like if 90% of the audience have to Google who this is, like it's not a good post credit sequence because it's
Well,
not helping anyone. But
when I saw it, I was like, okay, this is probably Apocalypse because he's the only thing I could think of in Egypt because they're probably not doing like a Dust storyline, and she's not Egyptian, but like, they were gonna throw in like a Middle Eastern character. I would like it to be her, but also like Apocalypse doesn't look like that really for very long. I'm sort of
I mean,
interested to see where they're going to go with that
I'm
because
assuming they'll have an older
they're
person. Like the kid they were got playing that guy was just like it was just some random actor who like happened to be in the area when they filmed it. So
yeah, but he better
it
watch
wasn't
out
like they
because
went out of their way to find someone to play Apocalypse.
what if he ends up in some kind of like 13 movie contract? Like,
Like it was just some guy who happened to be
no.
in Vancouver and like
Blood.
met Brian Singer, and I was just like, oh.
Yeah. But I'm interesting to see how they're going to do that. If they're going to be able to have an Egyptian dude without being like gonzo racist. And since they're bringing in Gambit, if they're going to do the Four Horsemen storyline at some point, where Gambit is deaf, I
What?
believe.
Is that a thing? Oh my god.
Yeah.
Love X-Men.
Yes. Apocalypse, like, I don't know if you're familiar with like Angel.
I know who he is, but like I'm
Yeah.
not familiar with him. Like it's
Well,
the
you've
guy.
probably like
it's
seen
like,
him,
like Warren Worthington.
with metal wings at some point, and that's because he becomes like Archangel. So, um, like because he's under Apocalypse's control. And yeah, Gambit is death. It's pretty weird.
Channing Tatum as Death. It's like it's almost as good as when they thought Channing Tatum was going to be cast as the Crow. Just Hollywood really
Oh
wants
my
him to get
god.
cast, I guess.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So there's like a lot of stuff going on. So I'd be interesting to see. I'm interested to see where they're going because yeah, the Apocalypse storylines are always fucking huge and really gonzo in the best way. Okay, what else do we have?
Like the one thing that kind of makes me apprehensive about Apocalypse, like, and
Yeah.
I don't really know that much about Apocalypse, but like the thing that makes me kind of apprehensive is like I really don't want to watch like another superhero movie where the whole point is just defeating this like big scary supervillain because like the whole appeal of the X-Men movies is that it's like slightly different and like if your antagonist is something political, you know, like
Well, that's-
Magneto or one of the human people who are like trying to get rid of mutants, it's interesting. Whereas like having all the mutants like team up to defeat Apocalypse is just a bit dull to me. It's kind of like it's like having like Thanos show up or whatever, or like it just.
Well, that's
dull.
why I'm really curious to see if they're gonna go with the Four Horsemen because then it's like X-Men versus X-Men. Like if you're gonna pull an Apocalypse, you want to do something interesting with it. So, like how can we defeat him when he's like utilizing these people against me, kind of thing. I don't know. I'm intrigued. Mostly though, I want them to get better about making a story about oppression and minority and the other, while including minorities and the other in it. When I got to see Days of Future
not
Past,
spending like 10 million. Yeah, not spending like 10 million years developing Charles Xavier's personality and then like forgetting to have like a coherent motivation for Mystique. So yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, she did have. I thought her motivation was very coherent. Really, like she was.
I think it's coherent. I think it's coherent if you're a fan who thinks about it for a long time. So it's like I think like you or I, we can both like look at the movie and like work something out. But I think if you're casually watching it, like most of the reactions to Mystique are just people going to be like, I don't understand what she was doing, like, or people just being like, oh, that was boring, or she was annoying, or something.
Well, I mean, Trask was
I
killing her friends, and she wanted to kill him. That part of it was very clear. The part of it where it's like, I'm fighting for mutant kind, I'm continuing this thing that Magneto has set into motion in First Class, I think that part was definitely obscured more. And I was really curious about the cast.
Like, I've heard like a lot of people just being baffled by Mystique who like aren't really fans, and I feel like for me, it's like I can always think of like some reason why the characters are doing something because I'll really obsess about a movie like this.
Oh, I do that
like,
too.
Then I'll talk to like I know, but it's like but then if I talk to my friends who's just like they're just casually watching the movie because it's like what's out that week, and it's like the reaction is just like what was Mystique doing and like who is this naked chick and stuff, and I'm like that just means that the writers are not trying hard enough to like make her make sense when you're spending hours and hours on man pain.
Yeah, she really needed more time, I think. I said in our planning doc, I really wish she had been more of a POV character.
Yeah.
Well, I think the major issue with the way that was done is that characters become interesting when they're interacting with other people. And the vast majority of her screen time is her essentially alone. I mean, she's not literally alone because
Right.
she's
That's why
But,
she
like,
should have
people or whatever, but
and also she's kind of like, she's there to be
Bryan
chased,
Singer, hire
so it's
me.
like both sides are just like fighting her. Yeah.
Right. Like,
Or,
that's
I
why
mean,
I
what
think
I'm
it would
actually
have been
hoping is, like,
great if
Bryan
she had,
Singer
like,
just get fired and replaced by someone else, please. To be honest.
if she'd had like a Hank character with her, you know, if she'd had Angel or someone,
Yeah.
I think it would have worked a lot better and made more sense too, because like clearly she has this network of mutants that she knows about that she's going to save.
I really
So-
like the idea of like a young mutant coming across Mystique and like thinking she's like really cool and badass and being like, oh yeah, Mystique's my mentor, and Mystique like having this kind of really cool like badass persona and then actually just being like an idiot teenager and she's just like, I don't have any idea what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Because that'd be like a really cool way to like illustrate the story that she was having in this movie.
I hope at some point she gets her like precognitive girlfriend. That'll never happen.
She's probably getting her own movie, like the kind of the other movie that was like, you know, mentioned by the X-Men producers was a Mystique solo feature. And I think that's mostly just because they know the Jennifer Lawrence Bells movies at this point.
Oh,
But like,
yeah.
I'll take anything. Like, I would be psyched to see a Mystique solo movie, and they'd have to make it pretty bad for me not to enjoy it, quite frankly.
Yeah, that's fair. So I promised Rachel from Rachel and Miles Explain the X-Men that we would talk about our favorite cinematic Richard Nixon portrayals, since I saw that she tumbled it. Also, I'm previously stalking her. Hey, Rachel. I love the work that you do about X-Men. But so I really loved Richard Nixon in this movie, even though I thought it was going to be like the worst. Because when comic books intersect with real life, it's always like, this president is George Bush, but it's not really George Bush, but he looks like George Bush. Jokes. And this was actually awesome and just cartoony enough where he like hits the tape recorder and is just like this awesome caricature of Richard Nixon who's about to be killed by a naked lady. I was really into it. Sorry. I thought it was going to be really cringeworthy, but
I thought it was really funny.
But it was just goofy enough. And he did the little Richard Nixon peace signs in front of the Sentinels. I was like, perfect. This is so perfect and weird.
He had his dogs.
Yeah. His dogs.
I think it was a tape recorder.
Yeah, just really perfect. And I know Frank Langella is like a great Nixon, but my favorite cinematic Nixon is from Dick.
I'm completely with you on this. The Nixon from Dick is, I think, the superlative cinematic Nixon, no question.
Just 100%. So if you haven't seen Dick, it's about when Kirsten Dunst and Michelle Williams meet Richard Nixon because they're wandering around the White House. So,
and then they become Deep Throat, and it's amazing. Sincerely, highly recommended.
That's amazing.
Amazing film.
I've never heard of that.
This is like 100% a real movie. Yeah.
This is a real film. It's before Michelle Williams was what we think of Michelle Williams as being today.
It's directed by the guy that directed The Craft, so you know it's quality.
And,
oh my god,
it's movie. Magnificent. There are some amazing music cues.
Yeah.
I believe Michelle Williams falls in love with Richard Nixon.
Yeah.
It's remarkable. They explain the 18 and a half missing minutes of tape. It's just, I watched this film with my mother, who's an American history teacher. She teaches everything about like Watergate and all the Nixon stuff, and she was like crying. She was laughing so hard because the amount of like actual historical detail that went into this film is like truly remarkable. She was like, "Oh my God, they used everything." So, really, you should all watch Dick. It's a great film.
Yeah. So if you enjoyed Richard Nixon in a really goofy scenario, you should see.
What a turn this podcast.
Well, there's also. Yeah, like, when I saw that question, I was kind of Googling, like, what movies have I seen with Richard Nixon, and I came up with Black Dynamite, which is, like, it's like a blaxploitation spoof martial arts movie, where the main character ends up in, like, a showdown, like, fighting Richard Nixon at the end. So,
that's pretty awesome.
That's a film. It's a very funny movie.
So, keep your eyes peeled for Fandom Saudi 55, Richard Nixon.
Yeah, no, it's like big
Um,
Nixon fans over here.
I'll
but
also watch The Butler.
oh yeah,
Featuring
right.
John
Oh
Cusack,
gosh.
I believe.
The schmaltzy depiction of Nixon, I can only imagine. Wow.
Yeah. Whew.
Yeah. So, anything else on our like? What else do we want to talk about? I think we probably have made it pretty
Yeah.
clear.
Just
Brian,
it's like
you're probably
to a little
like.
Nixon note, we've got something saying here that in the comics JFK was a scroll.
Oh yeah, he's
Apparently.
It's like it's a throwaway. I need to like. I know that JFK comes up as a scroll at least once because
Like
Hawkeye is
unfortunately I don't think X-Men can have scrolls because like Marvel has them or
no.
something, but like just I mean we already had like the assassination thing. So like I mean they've already
Right.
got like
I
quite
was
a
a
good
little
number of like ridiculous historical references.
Yeah, I was a little hesitant about it.
Have you seen
Like,
like the movie tie-in websites? Because like they made actually like compared
no, I
to like, a
haven't
lot of
looked at
movie
all of
tie-ins,
them.
they're actually really good. Because it's like a
I
lot of
like
the
the
time when you get
Trask.
tie-in websites for movies, they're pretty shit. But like yeah, there's
I
like
like the
there's
Trask
one for Task
one.
Industries, and there's one that's like it's like a timeline of important historical events in the 20th
Hmm.
century. So it starts off with basically first class, and then ends with like the dystopian future. And then in
Yeah,
the
I
middle,
did
they've
see
got
the
all of these kind of like
timeline.
mostly American events. And one of them is like they've got like all these kind of like American hate groups that they've invented that are like really blatantly like based on American right wing Christian groups. So like whoever is doing like the websites for the X-Men movie have like a real like liberal agenda bias going on.
Yeah, no, that's fair.
I mean, obviously, but like, and there's another one that's like all dedicated to like the conspiracy theories about Magneto's like assassinating or not assassinating JFK. But what they've titled it is the bent bullet, which is like fine if you're American, but if you're Australian or you're in the UK, you're like they really called it the bent bullet. And I'm just imagining like kind of Ian McKellen finding this hilarious. Like,
I am sure. I am sure. Ian McKellen slash the entire cast of like the movie.
yeah, they're just like fucking ridiculous. But yeah.
Oh boy.
I saw the Trask website and I really liked that. Um, I kind of wanted to talk to okay, in Ed Brubaker's Captain America run though, someone was like, at some point Hawkeye is like in a different comic, he's like, oh well, tell me at least Shield isn't behind like the Kennedy assassination, and Tony is just like JFK was a Skrull, and then and then they're also like, did Winter Soldier shoot Kennedy? And it's like, no, Kennedy was replaced by a Skrull infiltrator who was subsequently killed by Shield. So
Comics.
comics. So I wanted to talk a little more about Trask because I think he was pretty interesting in the sense that like, yeah, this X-Men movie had a villain, but it was mostly like X-Men trying to get their shit together to do good things instead of being bonkers sociopaths and failing. But I was really I really loved the casting of Peter Dinklage, and I wish the movie had had enough depth to really go into why that was interesting slash possibly important.
Yeah.
As following like the strain of like medicalization of being a mutant that we get from First Class, where Charles is always talking about different eye colors as mutations and
Mm-hmm.
stuff, like the natural mutations versus like the X gene mutations
Yeah.
with Trask. And I mean, I liked that the movie made his motivations sort of ambiguous in that regards. Because I think
Yeah,
it would have been
I was
really
quite glad of that
easy.
as well because I'm a little tired of like like mad scientists driven to whatever from family
Right.
tragedy and angry reeling against the machine of science. Like you just have him be like a weird experimental dude.
Yeah, and also like as a little person, I was sort of like, oh man, are they gonna make his like
Yeah,
motivations really weird and gross? And they didn't do that, but I think I would have liked a little more Trask character explanation. Like I really like that scene of
I
him in the lab where he was
feel like
talking
that
about
might
like
be something that got cut out of the film. I think that
yeah.
seems like something that probably got cut out of the film. So yeah.
Yeah, and also I don't know if I really trust like this this franchise to really tackle that very well.
No.
The sort of like, and like the kind of like disability. We haven't really seen an explicit like disability parallel in these films, because in the comics there are a lot of people with really shitty mutant powers. Like, you are a dude who sort of looks like a chicken, and like there was one
Oh god,
short
yeah.
one-off story.
And there's someone who's just like there's like a brain floating around in a balloon. So there's that girl and like
Yep.
her friend or like her boyfriend or something is just this like floating brain balloon thing.
Yep. There's like a one-off story where some kid, like on his 16th birthday, has the power to kill everyone around him because he emits like a toxic gas. Like, he just murders his whole town. It's really sad, actually, because like Wolverine meets up with him, but it's not really to recruit him, because what do you do with that? I think if it had been a more recent story, he probably would be in a suit or something. But you know, it's like there's a lot of shit that goes down, like Cyclops' backstory, where when he gets his powers and ends up like burning down an orphanage because like you suddenly have these really dangerous superpowers. And I always sort of like that, because obviously it's not a straight up parallel, because if disabilities gave you sweet powers, like that would be a lot different. But I'm always interested in that kind of reading.
I mean, I guess there's like Rogue. I mean, I need to rewatch the first X-Men movie because like when that came out, I was like 11 or something, and probably didn't pick up on all the subtext. But like
Rogue does have
one,
that storyline. You're right, and Warren does too. When they see him like cutting off his wings, like that sort of feeling of wrongness that we get that we're not really seeing so much in these two films, I guess. And I was sort of expecting a little more of that thematic tie-in with Trask, I guess, because he was very medicalized, very like.
I think it's like the movies are getting better, but they're also kind of getting stupider.
Yeah.
Like, no, I was just saying, I think the movies are getting better overall, but they are getting stupider. Like, the way they kind of discuss, like, the mutant kind of allegory and stuff is a bit, like, it's less...
Yeah, like, so when I saw...
It's less obvious and it's less complicated than it was when you were watching the earlier films.
When I saw Days of Future Past, I got to watch a Q&A with Patrick Stewart, which is really badass, just bragging a little here. But he was talking about how that was his favorite part about being part of the franchise, though, was to be part of a really big action-y franchise that was really rooted in this like anti-oppression narrative. And how like when he first saw this film, he saw that like he thought it was really ballsy that the franchise opens with like concentration camps, the initial X-Men series. And then they sort of tried to like, you had like this sort of visual throwback to it at the beginning of this movie with the mutant camps. And I thought that was interesting, but I feel like, yeah, it's also like too silly to really hammer that to like get into those themes. Like they're just sort of hanging out. Does that make sense?
Mm.
So, anyway, X-Men. Really good movie, but you're still really disappointed by it.
Oh, I think. Yep. The broker is at my apartment to show it to potential tenants, so I have to depart.
Okay. Well, it is 1 o'clock.
Yes.
So we can wrap it up.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Yes. This was fun. I hope to do it again. Thank you all for listening. Bye.
Yeah, thanks everybody who's listening. Okay, Gav and I could do our favorite thing in fandom. If you'd like.
Okay, well I think I kind of thematically, actually Morgan's gone now, but I think for this episode I would recommend reading Morgan's fanfic, X-Men fanfic that she wrote last week, which is freaking hilarious. And it's basically like it's told from Hank McCoy's perspective, and it's like him and Havoc having to deal with like Professor X, like in the aftermath of this movie, setting up the school. So it's like people have started to give their kids to like Professor X for the school, but it's like he's not like fully matured yet, so he's still like this massive tool bag, and like he thinks he's this really great like wise professor, and he's actually just like a really mega douche, and it's hilarious. So I
feel like there had to have been years of Professor X running.
Yeah, and it's like, you know, he thinks he's so good, he's so smart, and it's like, no, just because you have a PhD doesn't mean you're a qualified teacher, friend.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I would recommend that.
It was a funny fic. I did read it. So thumbs up to that. Oh, I don't know. Now that I said that, I don't know. Oh, I'm gonna say the ridiculous Teen Wolf like like online game to unlock their season 4 trailer. It was like out of control because you had to
Oh
find
god, is that the thing?
16
It's like some kind of
passwords.
weird like Mebius. It's like some weird Mebius strip of puzzles where it's like you need to have like some specific code key to get into the
Yes.
main puzzle, but like you have to have like another thing to get into that puzzle, and it's like
No, not quite.
why would we care?
It was like you needed 16 passwords, and all the clues.
Oh gosh.
Like, they put clues on Teen Wolf gossip blogs. They put clues if you are friends with the Teen Wolf Snapchat account, then you got a clue. One of the clues was call a phone number that was reflected in Megan Tandy's sunglasses in an Instagram that she posted. You called it, and then they would send you like a password number back, and that was one of the passwords.
Oh
But
god,
I don't
there's like no one has time for that. Like, I mean, I'm impressed, but like that is.
But I think
hard.
some of the passwords were only like figured out through randomized guessing because there were definitely not enough clues that I could find. Maybe there were clues hidden out in the world. And it was a fun trailer. I'm looking forward to it. But I love it because Fandom was just like, fuck you. Like 8,000 reblogs of that Let It Go like gift set where she's singing "Fuck It All," but they did crack it, so it was fun.
Well
So
done.
kudos to you.
I'm very impressed.
Yeah, I was impressed that it got cracked because
Yeah, I have no impatience for like puzzles at all. I took one look at it and I was like, no.
and I was impressed because the JavaScript was done really well, so it would be really difficult to extract the URL of the trailer. So kudos to their coder team. But yeah, so X-Men, man. I could talk about X-Men for probably another hour, but we won't. So, but thank you guys for listening. Thanks, Gav, for coming on. And I hope y'all had fun. Let us know what fandoms y'all would like to see, because we're going to try to schedule episodes a little more regularly, and if there are fandoms that you'd like to see us talk about, specifically, like drop us an ask on Tumblr at Fandom Spotting or on Twitter at Fandom Spotting, or holler at somebody who you know is on Fandom Spotting. Really, we're pretty easily reached. So I think coming up we'll have a Game of Thrones episode for this season, the Three Musketeers for the new show. We should do a Penny Dreadful show, I think.
OMG.
That would be fun.
Penny Dreadful show, and just FYI, guys, I'm the world's hugest Penny Dreadful fan. I would just spend the whole time screaming. It's the best. All of the dialogue requires about 25 Oscars. It's incredible.
Yeah, so those are the fandoms we're looking at. And let us know if you want more comics talks, because I obviously really enjoy them. All right, and with that, we're out. So bye. Thanks.